Further Review is brought to you by Consumers Beverages, Buffalo's beer store. Visit us online at consumersbeverages.com.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Further Review podcast for the Buffalo News. I am Jay Skurski, joined as always by Ryan O'Halloran. Ryan, new setting for us here in the press box at Highmark Stadium after what I think we can probably safely consider the game of the year. Certainly featured, I think, the play of the year, that being Josh Allen's remarkable 26-yard touchdown run, and it would be a crime to start any conversation about this game, Ryan, without starting there. At that play, you're writing about it. Mark Gaughan is writing about it. We're all writing about it. We're all talking about it. Your takeaways from that play, watching it live, and then hearing Allen and his teammates talk about it.
Yeah, let's start with if he wins the MVP award, this play is going to be the first highlight. Mm-hmm. If the Bills win the Super Bowl and they do a retrospective of the regular season, this will be the first highlight. 26-yard touchdown, so it was a scoring play. The stakes, 4th and 2, the opponent, Kansas City Chiefs. Roll it all up, and it was the play of the year for the Bills, but also I think the entire league. And Quentin Morris, and I'd never heard this before. Quentin Morris said, Josh Allen refers to himself as the safe guy and the daredevil. He goes, the daredevil came out. And that's a pretty good term to put because he was running for the first down. If he did make it, the Chiefs are going to win. I think they're down 2. Mahomes would have drove the team down the field. And, he had that great touchdown run against Pittsburgh in last year's playoffs. But this was even more impressive because, he looked left, he looked right, then he scrambled, then he broke a tackle, then he broke another tackle, and then he bounced off a guy and into the end zone. And it was, guys in that locker room were using the words like stunned, indescribable, tough to put into words. And these guys watch Josh Allen every single day, every single game. So it was a remarkable play at a remarkable moment, and what turned out to be another remarkable Chiefs-Bills game.
Yeah, I mean, the game itself lived up to the hype, right? As it seems like it always does between these two teams. But, after that play, I tweeted that, Josh Allen's the best thing that has happened to this franchise in 30 years. And, you think back to him joining this team and just what he's meant. And I think games like this, moments like this, allow us to sort of take that big picture look at who he is as a quarterback, what he means to this team. I mean, as you said there, Ryan, I mean, this is not a highlight for the Buffalo Bills. This is he is a league-wide superstar. He is it's Allen Mahomes. It is, and I know that Allen has to win more. The Bills have to win more before we can really make that Brady Manning talk in comparison, right? Because they each won. Brady more so than Manning, but I think that's the level that the Bills hope to get to one day, obviously. And the only way that they do it is with Allen. And so, you talked about teammates being stunned. I talked to James Cook and he said, I'm used to it by now. But he said it in such a way that it's like, you shouldn't become used to it. We shouldn't be numb to his greatness, right? And I think that, we can be guilty of it at times. We can take it, almost for granted. Dawson Knox said he's played more than 100 games. And it feels like he's done this 100 times, and maybe not in such a remarkable way, but the guy just amazes in really every, when you need something to happen, more often than not, the guy's making it happen. And I mean, this was not easy for this offense today. They faced 3rd and long way too much, right? But what happens when you need a play, whether it's 3rd and long or whether it's 4th down? You rely on number 17. You keep the ball in his hands and he makes something happen. And I like what you said about where this goes from here, right? If this team goes on to accomplish some of the goals that it has for itself, I think we're going to point to that play and say, absolutely, that was the moment where it became real, that this Bills team is for real. And the 8-2 start was something, but this is a signature win against a signature opponent on one of the biggest stages that the NFL has, at least for Week 11.
Get your cold beer here at Consumers Beverages, where you'll find the largest selection of craft, specialty, import, and domestic beer. Consumers Beverages has the fastest empty container returns at all 18 locations. Visit consumersbeverages.com, Buffalo's beer store.
Well, Jay, long before Josh Allen's 26-yard touchdown run to seal the game, he threw for 262 yards, and one of his main targets was Curtis Samuel. And for a lot of the season, Curtis was a square peg in this round hole of the offense. He couldn't get touches. He wasn't involved. He was barely playing. But over these last 2 games, he's taken advantage of the opportunity. Today, he had his first touchdown. What was Samuel saying after the game, and how can the Bills build on this with Curtis?
Yeah, I think there were some hints, right? There were some clues that a game like this might be coming for Samuel. You look back at that Colts game in week 10, and it was 8 targets. Now, it only ended up being 4 catches for 35 yards. But the fact that Josh Allen looked his way 8 times to me was significant, right? Because, this is something we've talked about before. When the quarterback trusts you, that's meaningful. And Allen's not throwing to Samuel 8 times if he doesn't trust him. And I thought Allen in the postgame was very complimentary of the approach of Samuel, right? No one would disagree that it has been a miserable season to this point for Curtis Samuel. He has dealt with injuries. He has not contributed nearly at the level that a lot of us thought that he would, that the Bills, quite frankly, thought that he would when they signed him, right? $8 million a year. He was expected to be a key component in this offense. It hasn't happened. He had 16 catches for 127 yards. That's a game or two for top flight receivers in this league, right? But you're down Dalton Kincaid. You're down Keon Coleman. I know it's offensive line, but you're down Spencer Brown. That's 3 starters or key contributors, however you want to factor that. They needed somebody to step up. That's been the case often this season, right? This is a team that has dealt with injuries, and you're going up against a legit defense. That Kansas City defense is good, right? And the Bills score 30 points. They're the first team since week 4 of the 2022 season to score 30 against the Chiefs in the regular season. That doesn't happen without Curtis Samuel. So I think he should be commended, not just for his game tonight, which I think was impressive. Again, not overwhelming stats, 5 for 58 in the touchdown, but the fact that the guy has not pouted, at least that we've seen. I've talked to him about his struggles. He's owned it, and I think that his teammates respect that. They have a deep respect for the amount of work that he's put in behind the scenes, knowing, and Allen said it, Khalil Shakir said it, that this guy just shows up every week and does the work. And, they were waiting for his moment to arrive. And I think it did on Sunday here a little bit.
Yeah, and I thought Amari Cooper came back from his absence. He averaged 27.5 yards a catch. I'm predicting that's an unsustainable pace, but he had a 30-yarder, then he had a 25-yarder right in front of us where he showed great body control, getting both of his feet in bounds. So you figure maybe Coleman will be back after the bye, or else they would have put him on injury reserve. Kincaid maybe a little bit more iffy. I thought the Bills should have passed more in this game. I mean, the run game was going nowhere, particularly on first down, and I think they don't run a screen game. They took some shots downfield, but I think how you see this offense evolve a little bit more is, try the shorter passes to these guys. Let them do things after the catch if teams are ganging up on the box to stop James Cook. So I thought today was a positive development for Cooper to get him back. You figure, the cast will come off in 2 weeks, you would think. That Dawson Knox had another strong game. Some of these touches are going to be sacrificed when you get these guys back healthy. But the more options you have, the more guys can stay fresh, and maybe the more things Joe Brady can do with different personnel combinations. So I thought today was a positive for that passing game and getting so many guys involved.
And Ryan, we've talked a lot about the offense, understandably so, the contributions from Allen, from Samuel at 30 points, but let's not forget about the other side of the ball. I thought this was a true team win, complementary football, which we hear so much. The defense, right? You hold Patrick Mahomes and company to 21 points. I think any game that you go into and you say, if you can put 21 on the board right now for Kansas City, would you take that? I think you always would. And you look at the way that the game started with the turnovers, the takeaways. Our colleague, Catherine Fitzgerald, is writing about the first and the last drive for Kansas City. Defensively, I thought they showed up. They got after Mahomes. What did you think the key was defensively for this Bills team?
Yeah, I'm not going to go on a limb here. If Terrell Bernard played that playoff game last year against the Chiefs, the Bills go to the AFC title game. and the
Yeah.
Bills probably go to the Super Bowl. I mean, Bernard was a difference maker. He had 8 tackles to lead the team. He had an interception to steal the game, and he also had a sack in the first half. You mentioned the interceptions, the bookend the game. Taylor Rapp on a pressure created by Daquan Jones, and then Bernard puts the game away. But you look at a couple of the superlatives. Did a decent job against the run, 78 yards allowed, and held Travis Kelce to 2 catches for 8 yards. He had 32 catches in the previous 3 games, and they obviously made an adjustment on Xavier Worthy, the rookie, because he came out blazing. Emphasis on his speed, blazing, but they made some adjustments, and he only had 4 catches. So, I thought they hemmed in Mahomes pretty well with they use that term pass rush integrity. Well, guys stayed in their lanes. Bernard, when he was used as a spy, he was effective that way, showed his athleticism. And I just thought Bobby Babbage called a pretty good game. And, they're going to, if they face each other again in January, be interesting to see what adjustments the Chiefs make. But I mean, Kansas City's offensive line is springing some leaks because Patrick Mahomes, it felt like he was under pressure a lot to the point where they started moving the pocket just to get away from him. So, Greg Rousseau, and I thought Greg Rousseau drew a penalty near midfield to turn a 2nd and 4 into a 2nd and 14, which became a 3rd and 14s, and the Chiefs punted. So I thought this was a good day for this Bill defense.
Yeah, a couple things that stood out to me defensively. You just mentioned Rousseau there. He had another 2 quarterback hits. He doesn't finish with a sack. I think that doesn't do justice to the impact that he had on this game. This guy is really stepping up, in my mind, Ryan, and becoming one of the, I don't know if we can say elite edge rushers at this point, but in terms of complete defensive ends, the effort that he puts in against the run and the way that he's impacting the game as a pass rusher, even if it doesn't always result in sacks. Von Miller had a sack today. I thought it was a pretty strong game for Von Miller. His sack, though, if you watch that play back, Rousseau rushes wide, forces Mahomes to step up, and Von Miller is sort of right there waiting for him. So I thought that was a big play. They hit Patrick Mahomes 7 times tonight, right? That's a lot of hits on a guy like Mahomes. That's a good quarterback who knows how to elude and escape pressure, as you mentioned there. 5 passes defensed. So they were active in the back half of the defense. They were active in the front of the defense. You mentioned Bernard. The guy's ability to make big plays is just game-changing for this team. I mean, he does it seemingly week in, week out. Another interception and a sack tonight. I thought Ed Oliver had a really impactful play. It was a 3rd and 1 run on Kareem Hunt that he stopped. His only tackle of the game. He also had a quarterback hit. I thought, big picture-wise, I think it's maybe been a bit of a quieter season for Ed Oliver than you'd hope for. But in a game like this, he stood up at times when you needed him. One interesting lineup decision, Kaiir Elam was a healthy and active, but when you're getting the play from their cornerbacks that they are from Douglas and from Benford, that's kind of a non-factor. And the thing about Worthy that was interesting, I know a lot of Bills fans on social media were really kind of losing it a little bit there when he has the touchdown catch and everything. That was his only drive with a catch. He had 4 catches. They were all on the same drive, 61 yards. So, whether that's the Bills making adjustments or the Chiefs just going away from him for whatever it's worth, that was the only drive. He touched the ball on the very first play. Probably not a surprise in my mind, knowing Andy Reid. That was a 7-yard carry. Then he has the 4 catches for 61 yards. So I think all in all, though, a very sound defensive effort. And as I said at the start, you sign up for 21 points against Patrick Mahomes any week.
Well, Jay, now the Bills go into their bye at 9-2. We won't look ahead because it's still 2 weeks until the 49ers, but let's look back at these first 11 weeks. If you had to, sort of sum it up in two or three takeaways, what would they be?
Well, the first one is they're better than I thought by a lot. I thought this was a 10 or 11 win football team. I think right now heading into the bye, they are a potential 13, maybe even 14 win football team. Obviously that game against the Lions in December looms large as a big challenge, but however you want to slice it, they're a better football team than I thought. Record-wise, I don't know if I would say skill-wise, but record-wise, I did not have them at 9-2 going into the bye. I don't know if the most optimistic of Bills fans had them at 9-2, and to be a half game out of the number 1 seed at this point. I think Sean McDermott deserves a lot of credit for that. I think the second thing that I would take away from this is that they have bought in completely to this. I know it's the everybody eats. We've heard so much about that, but I think it's more than that in terms of just mentality, right? And the chemistry that they have. Something was off with this team last year in that regard. And I know we can point to a guy that's down, hurt right now for the Texans as maybe being part of that. But I think it went beyond that. There is, I felt a genuine emotion in that locker room today that I just don't know is in there after too many regular season wins. You could see it on their faces. You could hear it in their voices. This was a big win for this team. And it was a meaningful win for this team. I think they were, the bye is a good time to sort of reflect a little bit. And I think going into the bye with this win, I think the vibes are kind of at an all-time high right now. But there's a lot of selflessness in that locker room, and it's shown in the way that different guys are contributing each week, whether it be Curtis Samuel or you go back to the Jets win and Ray Davis, right? They've had different guys step up at different times. And I think you don't get to 9-2 without that being the case. And whether that's offense, defense, or even Tyler Bass making a 61-yard field goal, special teams, they've found contributions really from 1 through 53 on the roster.
Yeah, I agree. And I'll switch it over to the defense and particularly the team building part of this. I had my reservations about signing Taylor Rapp to be a starting safety for this team. I think he's been pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Christian Benford, I think he's taken a step forward, and most importantly, he stayed healthy, which is what plagued him his first 2 years. We've talked about Rousseau. He's picked up his play. Von Miller has found the fountain of middle age. He's exceeded probably both of our expectations with his production this year. And then at linebacker, at least for me personally, I thought Terrell Bernard had a great initial season as a starter. Now he's officially become a star, and I think people are going to start paying attention to him more and more. Special teams are still a concern. Tyler Bass missed an extra point today. There's always going to be something going on with the kicker, I think. But overall, at 9-2, they got 6 games to go. They're going to be favored to win 5 of those. Will they win all of them? Who knows? But Detroit could be a Super Bowl preview, and they got New England twice. Those should be wins. You got the Jets; they are terrible, and you go to LA. West Coast trips are always tough, but I think the number 1 seed is in play because you own that tiebreaker against the Chiefs, and the Ravens lost. So, and to me, that's the Bills' goal for these last 2 months of the regular season is make sure you don't play Baltimore until you have to, because I think that's the only team in this conference right now that's a bad matchup for the Bills, and it may be the only team in the league that's a bad matchup. So, and you mentioned Sean McDermott. You give credit to him. If it weren't for Dan Campbell, he'd be in the Coach of the Year conversation, and he may be entering that conversation because this was supposed to be a transition year for this team. Instead, they have taken a step forward, which I really surprised at.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, I think the goals now have changed because the one thing that hasn't happened during this run of success for the Bills is they have not had that number 1 seed.
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't know just how valuable it is, but it is a realistic possibility now. And you get that week off, and then listen, they've had home field and they've lost 2 years in a row in the playoffs. They have lost at home. But the week of rest and what that could potentially mean. I think this win today opens up an entirely different conversation that we weren't having with a loss, right? With a loss, we're talking about playoff seed, we're talking about playoff positioning. The 1 seed's out the window. Now I think, the Chiefs still have a pretty easy schedule moving forward. We'll see what happens. But I think that becomes, as you said, a very realistic goal for the remaining 6 games.
Yeah, and you hit it, Jay. And one thing, the line I used in my story is, this win makes all things possible.
Yeah.
Because you have the quarterback at the height of his powers, and you are on a roll going into bye. So now things are really going to get exciting for Bills fans. When you get Matt Milano back after the bye, some of your other healthy guys. So, the Bills seem to be trending the right way. Let's wrap it on that. This was Further Review. He's Jay Skurski. I'm Ryan O'Halloran. We're both going to take some days off, and we'll be back after the bye and after the San Francisco Sunday night game. So Further Review, Buffalo News, buffalonews.com. Take care.
Consumers Beverages, Buffalo's beer stores since 1948. Find out what our latest deals are by visiting consumersbeverages.com.